Last week I gave you something I don't think enough coaches give you, and that's permission to stop guessing. So you took the Marriage Crisis Stage Finder at peacefulheartjourney.com, and maybe you found language for what's happening in your marriage. And if you're anything like the people I work with, that moment of clarity probably felt like relief. Maybe it felt like, okay, that is what this is. But then maybe something frustrating happened. You knew the stage and still don't know what to do next. So today I want to talk about the part that gets skipped, because knowing your stage is not the same as moving through it. Clarity can be so powerful, but clarity is not the same as capacity. And if you're in a marriage crisis, you don't just need a map, you need your next right step. And that's exactly what I'm going to teach you today. Hey there, welcome to the Focus Podcast with Tara Lee. This is the place where we talk about real life, real relationships, and how to grow through it all. If you're looking for simple mindset shifts, better communication, and deeper connections, you're in the right spot. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Focus Podcast with Tara Lee. I'm Tara Lee Eddington. I'm a marriage crisis coach and founder of Peaceful Heart Journey. This is the show for individuals and couples who are walking through marriage crisis. Maybe they're in separation or have disconnection, betrayal, uncertainty, emotional distance, and the painful question of, can this marriage be saved? Here is where we talk about how to move from chaos to clarity, from panic to steadiness, and from reactivity to intentional action using my focus framework. And today we're building directly on last week's episode about the Marriage Crisis Stage Finder. So if you haven't taken the Stage Finder just yet, you are going to want to go do that first. The link is in the show notes, or you can find it at peacefulheartjourney.com. Because today's episode is about what comes after the stage. You know where you are, now what? Here's the thing I see all the time in my coaching practice. Someone takes the assessment, they read the stage description, they finally have words for what's been happening, and maybe they realize that we're not just connected, we're in a disconnection stage. Or maybe they think, this makes sense, we're in discovery. That's why everything feels so unstable. Or maybe they're thinking, we are trying to repair, but my spouse still doesn't believe that the change is real. And that clarity is important, and it matters because when you can name the terrain, you stop wasting so much energy fighting the wrong battle. You stop trying to force a repair conversation when what's really missing is safety. You stop assuming silence means the marriage is over when you may actually be in a disconnection pattern. And you stop thinking your spouse is just being stubborn when they still may be watching for consistency. You stop guessing. But here's the part that I want you to hear. Knowing your stage is not the same as knowing how to move through it. I've met with so many smart, capable people. I've met with business owners, executives, mothers and fathers who manage full households, people who solve problems for a living, and people who are deeply faithful, thoughtful, committed, and willing to work. And yet they get to this place in their marriage and say some version of, I know what's wrong, I just don't know how to fix it. This is not a confidence problem, and it's not a character problem. There's a gap between clarity and capacity. Clarity is the map. Capacity is the nervous system regulation, emotional maturity, communication skill, support, structure, and accountability that helps you actually move. Because you can know you are in the disconnection stage and still panic when your spouse is quiet. You can know you're in the discovery stage and still not know how to function when your body feels like it's on fire. You can know you are in the repair stage and still feel crushed when your spouse doesn't trust your change yet. You can know safety comes first and still hear yourself defending, explaining, pushing, pursuing, or shutting down. So please hear me when I say this. If you know your stage and you still feel stuck, you're not failing. It means insight has outrun infrastructure, and infrastructure can be built. Okay, so now I want to slow down because this is where a lot of people get discouraged. They have the insight, they understand the pattern, they hear something on a podcast or read something in a blog and think, yes, this is exactly us. And then the next hard moment happens. Their spouse pulls away. Their spouse says, I don't want to talk about this right now. Or their spouse seems cold. Their spouse doesn't respond the way that they had hoped. And suddenly all that clarity disappears and they're back in panic. They're back to overthinking, back in trying to figure out what every little thing means, back in that anxious loop. And then they think, what's wrong with me? I know better. Why am I still doing this? Because I want you to understand something. Knowing better does not automatically mean you have the capacity to do better in a triggered moment. That capacity has to be built. It has to be practiced, and it has to be supported, especially when your nervous system believes the relationship is threatened. Because when your marriage feels uncertain, your body is not usually saying, let's be thoughtful and emotionally mature right now. Your body is saying, get certainty, get reassurance, fix this, protect yourself, do something. That's why so many people react from urgency, even when they intellectually understand what would be better. And these people don't need more shame. They need practice. They need support. They need a structure that helps them become steady before they try to create change in the relationship. After walking alongside couples and individuals through so many different versions of marriage crisis, I keep coming back to the same sequence. It doesn't matter if you're in disconnection, discovery, decision, separation, repair, or rebuilding. The sequence is always the same. Safety first, then connection, then vulnerability. I say this all the time in coaching. You cannot skip safety and jump straight to connection. And you definitely can't skip safety and try to force vulnerability. I know you want the big conversation, and I know you want your spouse to understand your heart. I know you want to explain what you meant, and I know you want to prove you are different. I know you want the apology to land. I know you want to ask, are we going to make it? But if your spouse does not feel safe, that conversation probably will not create closeness. It's probably going to create more pressure, more defensiveness, more distance, more shutdown, and more evidence in your spouse's mind anyway that nothing is actually different. Safety comes first. Safety means your spouse can begin to experience you as steady instead of reactive. It means that they don't have to brace for which version of you is going to show up today. It means you regulate yourself before you open your mouth. It means you stop using every interaction as a test of where the marriage stands. And it means you can hear something painful without immediately defending yourself, or collapsing, or attacking, or making your spouse responsible for calming you down. And safety is not perfection, it's predictability. Then comes connection. And connection in a marriage crisis usually is not dramatic. And it's not always the big date night. It's not always the emotional breakthrough. It's not always the deep conversation that finally fixes everything. Connection is often small. It's low pressure. It's almost ordinary. It's the softened tone, the text back, the 5 minutes of listening without defending. It's the moment you remember something they said. The moment you don't turn every interaction into a conversation about the relationship. It's the moment you turn toward instead of away. The moment you show warmth without requiring your spouse to match it immediately. That's connection. And after safety and connection have been practiced consistently, vulnerability can begin to land differently. That is where the deeper repair conversations can happen. And it's when apologies have somewhere to go. That's when honesty can create closeness instead of panic. And that's when trust can finally begin to rebuild. Every stage of your marriage crisis has its own version of this sequence. But here's the part that trips people up. You don't move through the sequence by understanding it intellectually. You move through it by practicing it. And you move through it with feedback and with support and consistency. Until it becomes who you are, not just something you're trying to remember in the middle of a hard moment. Let me give you a few examples. If you're in the disconnection stage, you may think the next step is to force more connection. You may want to say, we never talk anymore. We need to spend more time together. We need to fix this. And maybe all of that is true. But if your spouse is already emotionally withdrawn, a big, heavy conversation may feel like more pressure. So your next right step might be safety. It might be becoming less reactive. It might be creating low pressure moments. It might be asking one simple question and actually listening to the answer. It might not be making every interaction carry the weight of the whole marriage. If you are in discovery and something painful has come to light, you may want to fix everything immediately. You may want answers. You may want reassurance. You may want the pain to stop. But in discovery, both nervous systems are usually highly activated. So safety might look like slowing down. It might be taking responsibility for what's yours, telling the truth, not minimizing, not flooding your spouse with explanations, not demanding that they heal faster so you can feel better. And if you're in repair, you might be doing the work and wondering why your spouse still doesn't believe you. You may feel like, I have changed, why can't they see it? But repair requires repeated safety over time. Not one apology, not one good week, not one emotional conversation. Repeated safety, repeated consistency, repeated evidence. That's what allows connection to slowly become possible again. And then vulnerability has somewhere to land. This is why stage matters, and it's also why the stage is only the beginning. Because once you know where you are, you still have to practice the next right step for that stage. Okay, now I want to say something honest, because most people in marriage crisis are not stuck because they haven't tried hard enough. They're exhausted from trying. They've listened to the podcast. They've read the books. They've searched online at midnight. They've replayed the same conversations in 5 different ways. They've made promises. They've apologized. They've tried to give space. They've tried to talk it out. They've tried to stay calm, and they've tried to be patient, and yet they still feel stuck. And it's not because they're not trying, but because they're trying to coach themselves through one of the hardest seasons of their marriage while they're also the one in pain. That's why it's incredibly difficult. You are not meant to white-knuckle your way through marriage crisis alone. The couples and individuals that I have seen move steadily through their stage are not always the one with the most willpower. They're the ones who stop trying to be their own coach. They let someone help them slow down. They let someone help them see the pattern. They let someone help them notice the difference between communication and pressure, between a boundary and a punishment, between ownership and shame, between giving space and emotionally disappearing, between fighting for the marriage and trying to control the outcome. Sometimes you need someone else to hold the map for a minute so you can focus on taking the next step. Because when you're in the middle of it, everything feels urgent. Everything feels loaded. Everything feels like it means something. The text they didn't answer, the tone they used, the way they looked at you, the fact that they went to bed without saying anything, the fact that they were kind one day and distant the next. When you are alone with all of that, your brain will try to make meaning out of every detail, and usually it will make the scariest meaning possible. That's why support matters. Not because someone else can control your spouse, not because someone else can guarantee an outcome, but because you need a place to bring the fear before you act from it. You need a place to practice steadiness before you try to create safety in the marriage. Now, I want to share something with you that I'm currently building. My one-on-one coaching is currently full, and while I'm deeply grateful for that, I also know that there are more individuals and couples in marriage crisis who need support than I can serve privately in that format. And so I've been slowly moving away from opening more private coaching spots because my schedule is full, and I want to be able to help more people without lowering the depth of work. So I've been quietly building something behind the scenes. I've been creating a small beta group coaching experience for individuals and couples in marriage crisis. And this will not be a course that you buy and then try to get through all alone. It will not be a place to bash your spouse. And it's not going to be a room where everyone spirals together. It will be a guided coaching space, a place where we work through the same core sequence that I use in my private coaching. Safety, connection, vulnerability, the focus framework, emotional regulation, communication, accountability, repair, rebuilding trust, and the real-life practice of becoming steadier in the middle of a painful marriage crisis. Because the truth is, a lot of people don't just need more information, they need a place to practice becoming steady. They need a place to bring the moment that happened last night, the text that they almost sent, the conversation that went sideways, the fear that they don't know what to do with, the part of them that wants to be calm but keeps reacting. That's what I'm building right now. And because this will be the first beta round, it's going to be intentionally small. And I'm only going to open it to a small number of people. I'm also going to offer it at a discounted beta price for this first group. So if you're interested, you need to be on the wait list. This is where I'm going to share the first invitation when I open the doors. The link to join the waitlist is going to be in the show notes, or you can find it at peacefulheartjourney.com. And if the thought of doing this work with guidance instead of alone in your own head brings a little bit of relief, I would love to have you here. Okay, so here's what I want you to walk away with today. You don't need to solve your entire marriage this week. You just need one next right step. One step taken from a steady place instead of a panicked one. So if you know your stage now, ask yourself this. Am I building safety right now, or am I still trying to force connection before safety exists? That one question will tell you where to put your energy next. If you're pushing for the deep conversation, come back to safety. If you're trying to get reassurance, come back to safety. If you're explaining your intentions again and again, come back to safety. If you're trying to prove that you have changed, come back to safety. If you're watching your spouse's every move to decide whether you should have hope, please come back to safety, because safety is what allows connection to become possible, and connection is what allows vulnerability to eventually land. That is the sequence: safety, connection, vulnerability. And your next right step is probably not as dramatic as your fear wants it to be. It may be regulating before you respond. It may be listening without defending. It may be not sending the text. It may be apologizing without asking for reassurance afterward. It may be creating a small moment of connection without making it heavy. It may be getting support instead of trying to figure it out all alone. So if you took the stage finder and now you're wondering, okay, now what? This is your answer. You do not need another marriage tip. You need capacity. You need practice. You need steadiness. You need the next right step. And you don't have to take that step alone. If you want to be part of this small beta group coaching experience I'm creating for individuals and couples in marriage crisis, join the waitlist using the link in the show notes or go to peacefulheartjourney.com. Again, this group will be small. It will be offered at a discounted beta price, and the first invitation will go to the people on that waitlist. So if you are in a marriage crisis and you know you need support, structure, and guidance as you learn how to show up differently, that is your next right step. You don't have to figure out your entire marriage today. You just need your next steady step. I'm Tara-Leigh Eddington, and this has been the Focus Podcast. Remember, what you focus on expands, and I will see you next week. Thanks for hanging out with me today on the Focus Podcast. If something stood out or helped you in some way, feel free to share it or leave a quick review. It means a lot. Keep showing up, keep growing, and I'll catch you in the next episode.